All right, this is a 2005 Dodge Ram 1500 3.7 liter engine V6, and we're going to be pulling this engine for very similar reasons that we pulled the engine that was in there before. What I've done here is I blocked off both wheels. I know we're kind of on a slant here, but I blocked off both wheels. The emergency brake is on. I've also jacked up the front a little bit and put it on those stands, and I left the jack in place ready in case it's needed for whatever reason. And it's in neutral in case I have to move it back and forth into the garage at this point. It's gonna be hard to put it into neutral once I remove the battery power, so that's why I did it now. But again, for safety reasons, I have the tires blocked off. Always remember that. And the emergency brake is on, and it works. So that's where we're at. I'm gonna start removing the bottom infrastructure first. Again, before I do anything, I'm taking off the negative battery cable. This is a 10 millimeter. And if you don't have one of these electric ratchet wrenches, you should get one. They're worth their weight in gold. But also, I got this one from Walmart from the suggestion of a friend. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive. And he claims that it's just as good as the expensive ones. Negative battery cable's off. I'm gonna use this crescent wrench right here to attach to this on the fan belt. And I'm gonna be moving this clockwise. It's not easy. When I get to pulling off the 4 nuts that hold the flex plate onto the transmission. So that's why I placed that there. Also, always wear gloves unless you want to lose your skin, because you inevitably will if you don't. All right, now we're going under. Okay, I'm gonna take off these bolts here that hold the transmission onto the engine. And you're gonna need 14 millimeters, 16 millimeters, and 15 millimeters to do all this underside work. You're gonna need a 9/16 socket as well for the bolts on the middle, left and right, and also on the top, and they're English for whatever reason. And then you're gonna need an 18 millimeter box end wrench for the 4 bolts holding on the flex plate. And so that's all you're gonna need for the exhaust pipes that you're gonna have to undo right there, the starter that you're gonna have to take off, and all these bolts here. Now this plate here, it's hard to see. I'll show it to you once I have it off. It's gonna give you access to the 4 bolts for your flex plate. So I'm gonna take these off. I'm gonna use this wrench to crack the bolts to loosen them all up first, and then I'm gonna switch to here to take them all off. Okay, let me show you something here. This plate is held on by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts. I have them all out except for this one. Once this one comes out, this plate's gonna drop, and I'm gonna have access right here. There's enough room in here to get into the 4 bolts on the flex plate that are bolted to the transmission. These are 15. This is a 16 millimeter bolt. There's one on the other side, but it's covered by the starter, so you have to take the starter off. You have to take the starter off anyway to get the engine out. I already did that, and I put the bolt back on here so I don't lose it. Once I get the starter off, I'll take both of these bolts out. And then there's a bolt higher up, which is the English bolt. You can see I have the socket on it right now. There's 4 of them, two to be accessed from the top and two to be from the bottom, like this. They also hold on brackets that, you know, help secure some of this stuff in here. Okay, I have that plate off, as you can see. I have those bolts out. Now I'm gonna take these off. Right here, the exhaust manifold from the pipe. You have to get a wrench around one of those nuts, this one, and then, you know, undo it from here. That's probably the easiest setup you're gonna find. If you find one with these older clips, they're very hard to get on. Easy to get off, but very hard to get on. Just getting it lined up correctly, because it's just kind of an odd place, and these pipes get in the way of your wrenches. So just be aware of that. You'll need some flexible U-joints on your socket wrenches. Then of course, I think I covered this again, but I'm gonna undo that line from the transmission radiator here and here, and then I'm gonna undo this cam sensor. I'm gonna take that off, and then on the other side, I'm gonna remove that ground wire right there. So remember, you're gonna have to put all this back together when you install the engine. A lot of people take the oxygen sensors off. I don't know why, because there's no need to. So with that, that is all there is to do underneath the engine to prepare it for being removed. Everything else can be done from the top, except for those 4 bolts here that we're going to be undoing right here. A couple other things I'd like to mention. That clips into the top of the radiator, that little yellow wire. Don't forget that when you're putting it back in. And the other thing is, when you're taking the bolts off, use these 6-sided sockets. If you use the other kind of sockets, you're going to round off your bolts quite often. These are the best ones to use. Just one other tip. And when you're taking these bolts off, try to get a longer box end wrench than I have. This is 18, and it'll make your life easier. But for sure, if you have a short one like this, you better wear gloves when you're taking them off. That's it. One other point. This sensor was attached here. I undid it. There are these points in the engine where the wiring harness kind of connects in. You have to take these out. They go in easy, but they don't really want to come out easy. So I'm gonna have to get 2 hands on that. So unfortunately, you're not gonna be getting a video of it. Okay, I'm gonna show this one time fully. So I'm gonna turn this engine clockwise. It's not gonna be easy, but I'm pretty strong. So if you don't have someone strong, then you need to find someone that's pretty strong. And what it's gonna do is turn that flywheel or that flex plate a little bit so that I can have better access to the 4 nuts that I have to take off underneath on the transmission. So I'm gonna do this, and then I'll get underneath there and show you that. Okay, I'm guessing that should be enough. And looks like it, and that's the nut. Now these are Loctited in, so they're not going to be easy to crack, and it's wanting to spin on me. So I'll probably have to get someone's help to hold that wrench. So this is a two-man job. So I will leave this off and come back to this at a later time. Okay, here's another tip. It doesn't matter how you're organized, just so long as you're very organized when you start taking an engine apart. What I do is I put the bolts in these bags and I label them, and then I also give the measurement for the socket that will be needed to put them back on. And since I know that they're at the bottom of the truck, I'm going to put them all in the same box with the things that go on the bottom, like the starter and this plate. So that's the major way I organize things. However, sometimes I'll leave the bolt where I got it if it's capable of doing that. And in this case, for instance, I left them these exhaust pipe bolts screwed in and hanging with the pipe. So that's the two ways I keep organized. It will save you time, frustration, and much effort if you stay organized as you go. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is take off the air box and the air filter. Probably just need tins and a screwdriver for these. And then I'm gonna take off this front railing and I'm gonna loosen up the radiator and these two radiators, and then probably take the shrouding off, and then we'll be ready to drain the radiator fluid and then take out the radiator itself. And all this will be out of the way, and then we'll be able to get to the engine itself. Okay, on the airbox here, there's a sensor. Where'd it go? There's a sensor right there. It's in the back, hard to see. You're gonna wanna pull that off so that you don't tear it or anything, damage it. So be mindful to do that. Now I'm gonna take this railing off here so that's out of the way. And I'm gonna put that screw back into here so we don't forget it. There is no screw on the other side. It's been lost over time. I need to get another one like it. So that's something I need to remember to do. Next thing I'm gonna do is take this shroud off here. Takes Phillips screw heads, and I'm gonna use a ratchet Phillips for that. And then that will be out of the way. You're gonna wanna take off the power to your power steering fluid and the sensor. And this bolt right here. And then this whole thing will lift out of the way. Be careful that you don't spill anything, because if it's good fluid in there, you don't want to waste it. Okay, what I did here, this tube is the windshield wiping tube. It feeds from this here, and this is just a connector. This is just a connector. See there? And I just undid the connector so that this tube would be higher, and I taped it in place so it doesn't leak out at the bottom. And I undid these two connectors, these electrical connectors there, because we want to save this coolant and windshield wiping fluid if possible. Now, a word about these connectors. They're all a little different. Sometimes this red thing here is actually a little thin slider that goes out to the side. But in this case, it's pushed up and in place and locks in place. And you have to push that thing back down and it clicks down. And once you've done that, you can push this part and it slides right off, in theory. All of the electrical connectors are similar in that way, but they're all a little different and sometimes a little awkward to pull out. So just be patient with them. So I'm gonna lift this out and then it'll be out of the way. So next I'm gonna take this crossbar off with those star bits. That'll require the star bits. Now you might be wondering, well, why do they use star drivers for that? Why not just a regular screwdriver or even a bolt or something? Well, my theory is that mechanical engineers and the engineers that build cars first aspired to be aerospace engineers, but they couldn't handle the extra physics. And so they had to settle for working on cars or building cars and designing cars. And this is one of the ways that they take that frustration out on the world. So that's one reason why you see things like that. After I take that off, I'm going to take this shroud off here. It's just got a couple of bolts here on each side, and then it will lift right out of the radiator and it will be out of our way. Then we'll be able to take that shroud off completely. Okay, next I'm going to drain the radiator. And in this case, this is what I'm going to use. This is a plug that looks like it unscrews. Sometimes there's a valve that allows it to drain from a spigot from below. The old radiator had it, but whenever you're putting in a new engine, you should always get a new water pump and new radiator. And this is what the old radiator looked like. So whatever kind you have, you should have something to where you can easily drain it. Make sure you have a bucket. We're not going to reuse this, so I'll dispose of it. And so I'm going to drain it right now. And after that, I'll be able to take the radiator out. And then I'm going to be taking this off. Okay, so once that right side of the radiator stops draining, you take off this top tube and some more will drain. And then you take off the bottom tube and it will drain really fast. So you got to have, as you can tell, you got to have your bucket ready. And then you'll be able to lift the radiator right out. It's no longer attached. This radiator is going to sit out of the way over here. This radiator is going to sit under here out of the way. And we're not going to disconnect that so we don't lose the fluid from the power steering. And we don't want to disconnect that because we don't want to have to reconnect that for the transmission. And then this is the air conditioning compressor. This is going to stay all connected as well and just kind of pulled out of the way when we lift the engine out. So that's the idea. Next, I'm going to take off the fan, and I'm about to run out of batteries. So after that, I will be removing the air intake and of course disconnecting all of the wiring harnesses. Okay, at this stage, my automatic ratchet ran out of batteries, so that's charging. That's awesome. It's an awesome tool for getting these off. So I'm just gonna wait on those. And I got most of these off most of the wiring harness, but on this machine, this sensor on the AC compressor, the one down below here, and then the cam sensor down here, this one, are notoriously hard to get off. So instead of hitting them with a hammer, I decided to just take a break, step away from it for a second. I cracked and loosened all of these bolts, so when the powered ratchet gets charged, I'll be able to take those off quickly. And the next thing that needs to come off is the fuel railing. And when the fuel railing is pulled off, that's this fuel railing, it's going to pull out all the fuel injectors with it. So just be aware of that. So you got to be careful as you're moving it out. Then the second thing is, this is where it's connected to the gas line. this black clip will come off, and then you're going to need a tool. Don't even attempt this without this tool to open this up. And so this is an, what is this? 8mm. I'm going to get this on here, and you'll see what happens. Clips on like that, and then it's going to slide up to release the clamps, and you're going to have to pull this at the same time, and there's pressure on it, and so gasoline's going to go everywhere. So be aware of that. Okay, I got those other electrical connections off. I was able to see where they come apart after I was a little less frustrated. And then the airbox, or the all right, I was able to get the electrical connections off that were troublesome. Looking back at it, they weren't hard at all. I just needed to not be so frustrated with them. The air intake is off. The fuel railing is off, of course, and the wiring harnesses are pulled up out of the way. The power steering pump is off, goes there, and I pulled it over there out of the way. And the AC is off, put it down here out of the way. You want to be careful with these hoses that you don't kink them too much. And then label these top and bottom, and then pull them off and pull them out of the way. Those are the hot water, that's what provides your heater inside the cabin. Now I'm going to take off the engine oil tube, filler tube, and then I'll get the back two of those. There's two bolts back there that hold the engine on to the transmission. I'm gonna undo those two. And those are the English bolts. It's hard to see them, but they're back there. Then once those two are off, I still need to get the four below on the transmission, and then loosen up the engine mounts here, and it should be ready to come off. Of course, have a look at these, where these are anchored to the engine. Again, I'll need to get two hands on that to do it so I don't break it. But almost ready to pull the engine out.